Right, we're live.
Okay. Right, welcome everybody to tonight's planning committee meeting. I believe that we've got somebody to speak in a public session. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Would you like to go ahead?
All right, okay. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to speak. I really do appreciate it. My name is David Oliver, and I live at 38 Moreton Road, Buckingham. And I've had notification that I'm to lose my parking, which I rent from Aikman Asset Management. And although they're absolutely in their right to take back their land, it does mean that it pushes me back out onto the road. And as you know, Moreton Road is a particularly busy road, and it means that the parking on there is pretty limited. I think probably at a stretch you could probably fit about 6 cars, and regular of a night there's about 10, 15 cars trying to park in that small space. So there's regularly illegal parking there. So I know that as I've had people coming around to view the land from my back garden, and I don't mind them doing that, it's clear that they're looking to develop that land. And what I'm hoping is that the council in its planning thinks about how it can increase or reduce the amount of parking that's taking place on Moreton Road, and perhaps encourage the developers to think about how they might reduce that parking on that road, because it's becoming a bit of a nightmare down that road. I've witnessed my next door neighbour's cars being written off twice, with cars coming down at quite some speed and then bashing into the cars because they have little time to get past all those cars before the oncoming cars block their way. So I recognise that the loss of my parking arrangements would have happened at some point. But at the time I moved into that parking space, the yellow lines didn't extend as far as they did down the road, and now they extend past my house, and means that that basically about 25 yards down the road I have to walk to the nearest parking spot if you're able to get in there. So I hope that the committee can support trying to increase the parking or find solutions to the issue around parking in Moreton Road, and perhaps will link with the Mr. Chilvers, Councillor Chilvers, or others on the Buckingham Council to influence the planning around that development. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. So there you have it, as in a nutshell. It's not just about me losing the parking, it's about the danger of increased parking on that road. As I say, there's been some very serious accidents down there. And also it's about continued illegal, I say continued illegal parking, because I'm going to be pushed out onto the road. I'm going to have to fight my neighbours for a space, and I don't really want to upset people, but no doubt if I manage to get space on that little bit of parking, somebody's going to be upset. And so I don't know what the council can do. I know the town plan was to increase the parking within Buckingham, and this seems to be an opportunity. Perhaps you can have some influence on what happens henceforth. I'm also conscious, a little bit way up on the left-hand side, there's a development of about 13 houses, I think, have been given permission to develop on the left-hand side. So there's going to be a lot of cars coming onto that part of the road, particularly if they're thinking about putting dwelling on the land adjacent to my property as well. So I hope that's given you a flavour. I'm open to questions if people want to question me. Okay, it's only about the second time I've used Zoom. So a nice experience.
We don't usually do questions and answers in a public session.
Yeah.
But if members are happy, we could bring up item 12, the Moreton Road parking space, to the top of the agenda after we've done declarations of interest and things like that. If members are happy, we could bring that item up.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go into the meeting now. I'd just like to make a caveat that my MacBook freezed up as our resident was talking, and I was having a mini heart attack. So if that happens, I will ask the vice chair to take over, and that's probably what's happened, is I can't do anything on my screen. Okay, so apologies for absence. Do we have any? I think we had Charlie, didn't we?
Louise is muted.
Just Charlie and Tim.
Thank you, Louise.
I think John said previously he can come.
Okay.
No, he's there. Sorry, John.
Anthony?
Roger Newell has just emailed me requesting how to get into. Oh, he's there. Good. He's arrived. I was just going to give his temporary apologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any?
Fine. Is she coming?
Sorry?
Coming.
Roger Newell is doing for Carolyn. She's not available this week.
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay, declarations of interest. Do we have any? No. Okay, so we'll bring up item, what did I say it was?
And can we do the minutes?
We can do the minutes if you want to.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Item 3 minutes.
Just one question, Chairman. On item 24/20, we had a long discussion about whatever, and at the end of it, it says the committee recommends to note Councillor Stutsbury's question. Well, because you can't see Councillor Stutsbury's question, you might as well not wrote committee wishes to note Councillor Stutsbury's question. So can I ask that the question which I asked at Cabinet, which you all read, is included? Otherwise the members of the public who read these minutes won't know what it is. So it might be as well as it was included in the minutes, please.
Yeah, I don't think that's too much of a stretch. Absolutely, we can do that.
Otherwise it's
No,
I
you're
could have
right.
asked anything. I could have asked.
Yeah. No, you're right, Robin.
It wouldn't
Thank
make any
you.
difference. It seems logical to include it.
Thank you. Absolutely right. Thanks. Okay, so item 12, Moreton Road parking space, Appendix H. Would anybody like to say something on this item?
Mark has his hand.
Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. David, thank you very much for your presentation there. This is of great concern, of course. What you didn't mention in your piece was it's also a bus route, of course, and that there's a potentially 130 more houses coming up at Maids Moreton behind the Wheatchief pub, which is going to hugely increase traffic there. You mentioned that you and your son both have parking there. Do you pay for 2 spaces or 1 space?
Well, we pay for 1 large space, if you like, and my son parks in the same space as me.
Yeah, and how many other spaces would be available if it was used as a car park?
Oh, on that, it's actually quite a small one. Basically, it's a turning circle. So you park your car and you can reverse out. You can reverse in there before pulling out, rather than reverse onto the road. So probably it's only 2. I mean, if it was extended, then clearly you could. It goes the length of my garden, which is some 60 metres. Yeah, and I have some recent people have come around to look at it, obviously for development purposes, and I have suggested that I would be willing to come to some arrangement with them about the use of the bottom end of my garden, which backs onto the hospital, and my neighbour is also of the same view as well, that if they could come up with some arrangements to remove parking from Moreton Road to the back, if you like, near where the hospital is. But obviously that's going to be subject to, that's a bit wishful thinking at the moment.
Thank you.
That's right.
Councillor Stutsbury?
Yeah, I have had a short correspondence as a Buckinghamshire councillor with the constituent over this, and I did correspond over elements related to that land. And what I have discovered is, thanks to the assistance of the constituent, is that the land after the development is either pursued or not pursued by Ackermans, there will be an uplift to the AVE, which is Out of Vale Estates. Now, that information I've left with the office because it may be relevant when we get to another stage. It may not be relevant, but it is background information. And Councillor Chilvers did respond to me, and I responded back to the constituent about this. It wasn't the answer we were looking for, but at least we had a correspondence. The other matters to do with planning, I think we shouldn't really comment on them until such time as we get a planning application, and we look to, if an application come forward, if it's in line with the neighbourhood plan or whatever, that is something that we would consider at that point, dependent on the application, because we can't really comment on something we haven't seen, which is unfortunate. We haven't got second sight, although obviously other people in other places must have by now. Does that help? It's only just being straightforward about what I've been doing.
All right, thank you for that. Is there any other hands up, Paul?
Oh, John.
Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I obviously huge sympathies. Given it was a custom and practice to be parking there, and now that looks likely to be taken away. So I understand the frustration and upset that this must be causing. I'm speaking as a former resident of Moreton. I mean, that's a route obviously that I used to take on a very regular basis. And I know that when you're coming down the hill from Moreton into town, the number of cars parked there can't be any more. Because if you're trying to come down and waiting for cars to come around the corner from, past, up the hill, if you made the spaces any longer, you wouldn't then be able to judge it so that you weren't going to run this coming in the other direction. So it's about the maximum number of spaces that can be allowed on the road there, unless of course you bring in traffic light control, whereby you'd make it effectively a one-way system on a permanent basis. But I think that's unlikely given that it's an A road and so on.
Yeah.
So I don't see any easy solution, I'm afraid. The only easy solution would be to win the lottery and buy the land before anybody else buys it, and make it part of your own property. But I think obviously that's a kind of pie in the sky solution. In terms of increasing parking, the town council doesn't really have a role in that. We don't have the resources to purchase land and create parking. Certainly not nearby the properties on Moreton Road. Obviously, there's talk about trying to increase parking at Cornwall's Meadow by maybe putting in a second layer and so on. But that's again a long-term plan. And as you'll probably know, one of our aims was to actually have parking where the new care home is going, next to Cornwall's Meadow itself. So I'm just offering sympathies, but I don't see any easy solutions, I'm afraid. And I think the unitary council are probably in the realm of asset liquidation as much as they can. And I'm sure they've spied this piece of land probably alongside with the wood that's next to it, between the land and the old police station, as being potential land that could be used for some sort of housing development. And I'm sure that's what their glittery eyes are looking at, avariciously, as it were. The other thought that occurs, and again, you've probably thought of this, so forgive me for saying it, as you may have done, is there any way you could actually negotiate a deal with the hospital site and park your cars there and arrange some sort of passage either through or over the wall between yourself and the hospital? It's not ideal, but maybe there's a possibility there. But forgive me, you probably thought of that solution already.
Yes, thank you.
Mark has his hand.
Councillor Cole?
I heard what John and Robin have both said, and Councillor Stutchbury, particularly you, saying we would need to wait until there's a planning application. I don't think we need to do that. I think we should preempt this and write to John Chilvers and point out the problems, the increasing problems of parking here, and suggest that rather than develop this for housing, they make this a car park for the residents of all those cottages, so they can clear much of the A413 Moreton Road. And I think we, as a town council, have a duty to our residents to try and do something about this. As John said correctly, we don't have any control over parking, but we could make a request to the council that they consider this as an option and on the interests of safety and for making life better for residents in Moreton Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, what do members think of that idea that we write to Councillor Stutchbury?
Yeah, I quite understand where you're coming from, Councillor Cole. What I didn't say to you is, within my correspondence that I had with the cabinet member, he did indicate that the land was in possession of Akerman, and within the correspondence I'm privileged to, the land belongs to Akerman, doesn't belong to the council. So Akerman, for information, is the partner in AVE, which is Alger Vale Estates. So writing to the council wouldn't be appropriate because the land is in a partner deal dating back to 2009 with Akerman Estates, when Alger Vale District Council set up an asset management company. So writing to John Chilver, that's the answer you'll get, is it's not my responsibility. It's at Akerman and AVE, which isn't me. I'm not saying that I disagree with what your motives are. It might be that AVE's motives are to generate income, and for information, I'm advised that they generated £300,000 income in the past preceding 2 years. So I think we need to talk to Akerman and AVE and not the council, although copy John Chilver in, because obviously he has a responsibility to the finance. I'm only saying that not to disagree with what you're saying. I think you're right, Mark, but if I didn't give you the privy of that information, I wouldn't be being correct, would I?
Thank you. May I make that a proposal, Madam Chairman, that we do write to AVE and Akerman Estates with what I outlined?
Yeah, happy with that. Can I have a show of hands who agree with that, please?
I agree, but I'm not. I wouldn't be counted.
Yeah, that's unanimous.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go back to the main agenda. Well, thank you, David, for coming along to our meeting tonight and talking to us. I hope you appreciate that we are concerned about that area. Yes. So thank you again.
And I do thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye. Okay, so item 4, solar farm proposal, Appendix A. Who would like to speak on this item?
Well, it says here, Mr. Weirmouth is going to talk to us.
We don't have anyone here, do we, Paul?
No, we don't. Councillor Harvey has a hand up.
Councillor Harvey.
Well, I circulated to members a couple of days ago in that the plan within the document that they've circulated does not include the footpath that goes right across the patch that they hope to turn into a solar farm. Now, I don't know whether they expected us to forget about this. I'm not entirely clear from the text whether they've referenced it. They talk about there being a path going from east to west in the document, but I'm not sure if that's the one that they've shown or whether that's the one that actually they've omitted from the actual diagram. It could just be an oversight. I'm not accusing them of being disingenuous or anything like that. But I think the very first thing they ought to be considering is what would they plan to do with that public footpath. To my mind, if a solar farm gets the go-ahead, the very minimum they should be doing is building in a path that can take people through. I don't know how they would do that, but presumably a fence on either side with gates as required by the developer. But it's entirely possible to have a path going through the area. I see no difficulty with that. a diversion would not be acceptable, because a diversion clearly would multiply the journey time significantly. In principle, of course, I mean, given that I put solar panels on my own roof, I have no objection at all to another solar farm. I think, you know, more solar energy, more wind energy is always a good thing. And the more we can have, the better. And when it comes to farmers and landowners making the most of the land that they have, clearly they can make a lot of money from a solar farm, in the way that looking after a bunch of sheep or cattle probably takes a darn sight more effort for a lot less profit. So it would be wrong, I think, to suggest that a farmer should not be, you know, or the landowner should not be using their asset in the most efficacious way. Now, I'm glad it's not a nuclear power station, but I am glad it's a solar farm, because that's only going to help the production of energy into the future, and that's got to be a good thing. But the footpath must remain, and they must be able to accommodate it within their plans.
Okay,
Councillor Stutchbury and Councillor Cole have their hands.
Okay, Councillor Stutchbury.
Well, firstly, I thank Councillor Harvey for spotting that over the weekend. Eagle eyes there, well done. But secondly, I think the two things are separate. The application and the footpath are two separate issues. The footpath is a matter of rights of way, of which if they want to move a footpath and deviate it, they have to go for a route modification order. And they can't just move that within the planning. It has to go through a proper consultation over the movement of the right of way or gating of the right of way and changing it. So I think it's in our interest to both advise, irrespective of a view on it, it's in our interest to both advise the rights of way that there is an issue with the footpath within the application. And I think irrespective of whatever view we took, we should advise the owner of the land of that being the case, because it would be a travesty, wouldn't it, if I believe from John's correspondence, he will correct me, I know if I'm wrong, that this is the only footpath which directly takes us down to Farnborough. And I should imagine Councillor Cole knows a little bit about Farnborough as well, having once been a councillor at Farnborough. So I think those two things have to be raised separately to the planning and separately with them. How you deal with a future application or whatever is entirely consistent. The other thing is we must, I presume, see what we designated that land within our neighbourhood plan, and we have to act accordingly to that. We are very strong at defending our neighbourhood plan. I'm not sure Sheena may advise us that it's not a problem, but we should look at it in conformity and accurately, not on an emotional basis. I hope that's okay, those two suggestions, because having sat on rights of way for 4 years, I've seen a few of these in my time.
Right, can we take Councillor Cole and then ask Sheena to answer your question on neighbourhood plan, please? Thank you. Councillor Cole.
You need
Mark?
to mute.
Mark, you're muted.
Too busy reading a screen, sorry. John mentions about the footpath, but that he does say it's crossed in the project site plan. It says it's crossed by a single footpath east to west. And looking at the map, I think that's the one they're not showing it on the map, but it does mention it in the text. But yes, it's something that has to obviously be looked at very carefully. The bigger problem for me, I think, Buckingham Neighbourhood Development Plan, Policy 1012, which promotes small-scale renewable energy regeneration, but only permitted where it preserves or enhances heritage sites. First of all, I would question whether it's small. Secondly, I'd point out this is within a visual distance and also very short linear distance. First of all, the medieval bridge with Roman temple by it, of the Roman barrows, which overlook the medieval bridge, Roman villas, which are down at the Twins, where the Padbury Brook joins the river, and also the fact there's already a large solar farm at Thornborough Grounds within 1 mile of this site. Now, this valley, the Ouse Valley here, has had a lot of development over the years with gravel extraction, etc. And I think even more than this is becoming overkill. I'm not at the moment, you know, preempting this, because I know this is here for discussion without prejudice. But I'm surprised Mr. Wearmouth isn't here tonight to hear what we're saying about this. And he wanted advice before a formal application is submitted. Well, that is my advice.
Thank you very much. Sheena, did you want to answer Councillor Stutchbury's?
To be quite honest, I think Councillor Cole has done an excellent job on the neighbourhood plan. The land obviously was considered to be agricultural. It's outside the development settlement boundary. And yes, I would say that although we are in support generally of renewable energy within the plan, I would share, I was just looking at the location, I would share some concerns about how close that is, because that's our grade 1 listed structure within our area. So yeah, I would have some concerns about how that's going to impact on the listed building and the heritage in that area. So yeah, we might want some more particulars on that.
Thank you very much, Sheena.
Martin Try's got his hand up, and then Robin.
Councillor Try.
There we go. Yes, I'm not in favour of this location. Before COVID, there were nice, well, there still are nice walks around there, but I used to use it before COVID. And since COVID, there's been a lot more people using those circular routes. One to the north of the allocated area, and then the one that goes through the allocated area. And I wouldn't be particularly pleased if I had to walk through a field, you know, with solar panels either side of it, if that was the case. It's a large area to reroute, which would take you down by the main road area, which wouldn't be very pleasant. So together with the location and the historical area and the footpaths, it's not looking good from the way I see things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
I know what's been said, but I still propose that we write to the, irrespective, we're not considering an application tonight. We were hoping to have a presentation, which didn't take place. But I do think, as we've seen this information, I would like to propose that we write to Rights of Way, making them aware of the fact that it says in the paperwork, as Mark Cole always spots these things very well, it says in the paperwork there is, but it doesn't identify it in the map. And councillors looking at an application tend to look at maps, not paperwork, that often. So I think we need to make it clear to Rights of Way, and we also need to write back to the landowner and give him information about route modification orders and the process of which they do, because there's a legal text which gives people the right to object, and there's a legal process. You cannot move a highway or a right of way just within an application without going through a legal process. You may not be aware of that, and you may have thought putting an application all at once does it. It's a separate legal entity and it's a separate thing. Footpaths have got as much protection to them as a road. So I think we need to make him aware of those things as a good custodian of the town.
Okay, what do members think of that?
I'll second that, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mark. Right, so we have a show of hands to go in that direction for now.
I make that 5.
Objections?
None.
Abstain?
1.
Is that everybody?
Can I just ask, Chairman, that we do make sure we mean it, that it wasn't a comment on the application, it was a comment on the presentation. I think it's quite important we do that.
We don't have an application, so I think that will be clear in a minute.
It was comment on a presentation, so people don't come back and say they voted on an application or something thereafter. We have to make sure minutes say that to our own protection.
No, we'll make, yeah, because there isn't an application, so we can't vote on what we don't have. Okay, was that everybody,
Try
Paul?
has a hand. Wait, it didn't add up, I didn't think. Councillor Try has a hand up.
Councillor Try?
Can I just reiterate what Robin's just said? That yeah, we ought to make it clear that this is our advice for footpath rerouting, and it's not anything to do with our approval or not of the presentation stroke possible future application.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Right. Do we need to vote again? Because I don't think, Paul, you said it didn't add up.
Yeah, I must have missed someone, sorry.
If it's only one person, then it's carried anyway, isn't it? So
It's
five.
definitely carried.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Right. So next is item 5, the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, Vale of Aylesbury Plan, to receive a report from the Town Plan Officer. Appendix B. Would anybody like to speak on this?
Councillor Stutchbury and Councillor Hirons have hands.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury?
I'd quite like to hear Sheena, before we speak on it, present it as she actually done the report, and then comment on Sheena, that rather than going, if that's okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's what I wanted as well.
Sorry, Sheena, you're up.
Okay. I think probably the first two developments that I've noted about pavement licenses and a few, I think, easing of extending period of time to cover the COVID lockdown, and also the possibility of variation of site working hours, obviously to help speed up projects again. Not too much of a problem. I would say the Deputy Town Clerk is very aware of the pavement licenses situation in terms of the market in general, but there's no notification to us. It's a 7-day, you put the site notice up, 7 days, and then the local planning authority have 7 days to determine it. There are caveats about obviously street furniture and people with mobility problems, etc. But I think we're aware of the potential there. Permitted development rights to a certain extent in the town centre, the conservation area makes that perhaps less of an issue for us because there is some protection there. I think most people's focus is probably on the planning for the future document that has been published by the government. As I say, there is a huge amount to digest in this, and not wishing to sound terribly trite, the devil is in the detail. There is a lot of detail, but there's also a lot of detail missing as to how things are going to actually work. There's a lot of aspiration in it to make things better, but not an awful lot of detail on how that actually is going to be achieved. There's obviously a lot of, one thing I didn't pick up on in the report, but I've subsequently delving in, prop tech, property technology, which is something obviously I'm going to have to read up a lot more about, because the government seems very, very keen on it, bringing it forward. Basically, they will retain, from our point of view, they will retain neighbourhood development plans, but there is actually a question in the consultation which asks the direct question as to whether or not neighbourhood development plans should be retained. I think we will be responding generally to this, but I think that's quite key, because there's obviously quite a few developers who would perhaps prefer to see the end of neighbourhood plans. So hopefully there will be quite a robust response from those of us with neighbourhood development plans. How a development plan, if it survives, is going to link with the local plan is one of those areas where there's not an awful lot of detail. Whether it will still have that dual existence as part of the overall development plan is not clear. But what does seem to be the case is that the government's idea is that we will be largely involved at the plan making stage, and therein after the whole process will be very much speeded up. and will not really involve consultation at, I would say, town council level by the looks of things, and possibly not even at local planning authority. There's quite a lot about leaving it to the planning professionals once the plan is actually made. So the key thing seems to be that we will be there to provide a design code for the areas zoned for development. I have to admit, I am still working my way through it in more detail, but I suspect this is something that we're going to have to look at in terms of how the town council wants to respond. There are a large number of questions that are posed within the document. Most of them are yes, no, don't know, with some that are very rather pointed guidance, but all of them require a supporting statement if you're responding. So I'm very happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Sheena.
Roger Newell and Councillor Cole.
Thank you,
Councillor
Roger.
Stutchbury.
Thank you. Just to follow up on something that Sheila mentioned, is that I've been reading it as well. I have a copy here. And the one thing that actually concerns me is it doesn't actually tell you how the decision making is going to work. It, as we know, we get these major applications in that can take quite a long time due to negotiating Section 106s, etc. But in there, it just says that if it's not determined within 13 weeks for a major, then the developer can have his fee back. The one thing that I think they need to supply details on is that if you get a planning application that's submitted, or the details in this case, and you send it to the statutory consultees like the drainage people, heritage, and if they require more information because they can't determine it for what they've got, does the clock stop? You know, does the 13-week clock stop? And it's something that I think that needs to be highlighted. And it's simple. There's, like Sheena said, it's full of aspirations, and it's very much a let's speed this up. The concern I have is that, like Sheena was saying, this prop tech, it goes on and on about this digital planning system. Doesn't actually say how that's going to work and who's paying for it. So I think it's a very flawed document in its current form, and I suspect that it will change somewhat. I hope it changes somewhat anyway, and they will need to produce yet another planning act to replace the 1990 Act and the 1991 Community Act, and there should be more detail in there. But at the present time, it's the whole process of a planning application which actually isn't in there. How is it determined and by whom? Except that, as Sheena said, they want to devolve more power to the officers. So it looks like my reading of that is that there won't be a planning committee, because you can't get a major development detailed application to a planning committee and determined within 13 weeks. It's just impossible. So yeah, so it's not particularly a brilliant document in my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, I think Councillor Cole was next, and then Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. That was actually very good what you were just saying then, and I fully agree with you. I too had a look through this white paper. It's the government's intention, it says, is to get this made law before the end of the current Parliament. That's 2024. So that's a couple of years away yet. But the consultation period finishes on October the 29th. So that's when we've got to get some answer in. Looking outside the white paper, it's generally believed that 1 million permissions to build have been given, yet have not been built, i.e. land banking, which all the developers deny that happens. And as far as neighbourhood plans are concerned, those people who haven't got neighbourhood plans and those wanting to renew have only got 30 months in which to do it, which Sheena will tell you is a nightmare to try and get all that agreed and referendums, etc. Sheena, in your piece, you mentioned about population of Buckingham. I thought we'd been working on 15,000. You say 12,000 there. And also where you say about 25% of affordable homes should be first homes, nowhere in the document does it say what nationally the average should be of affordable homes. We're 35%, obviously, in our plan. ABDC, before they disappeared, wanted only 25% in VALP. Do we know what the national figure might be for affordable homes?
Sorry, just checking I was still on speaking. As far as I can see in the document, no. They're talking about having a nationally calculated figure, so it will be done centrally for the requirement for homes. Within that, they haven't given a national figure in terms of affordable homes. They want, when they talk about affordable homes, they don't give a figure to that, but what they do say is, as I said in the report, of that figure, whatever it might be, they want 25% or a quarter of those to be first homes. But how they're going to calculate affordable housing need, presumably will come when they reveal how they want to calculate overall housing need as a set central figure.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury is next.
Thank you. I concur with all what's been said, but there's some elements to this which relate directly to neighbourhood plans and the town council. It says infrastructure levy will be pulled and spent locally, defined locally. That means that where is local? Is local Buckinghamshire? Is local Buckingham? Is local Charndon if it's in Charndon? Or is it Steeple Claydon if it's in Steeple Claydon? Define local. It also says that the authorities will have to determine these applications. Now, if you look at the 1948 plan, the 1947 Planning Act, we've gone a long way away from the 1947 Planning Act, where it was about local authorities determining planning applications in a remit of growth and recognition of their area. We've come a long way since the aspirations of 1947, and now we are in aspirations of a developer. This is not a good thing. One of the things that frustrates us all in developments is the fact that they take a long time to be determined. And that is because after outline planning is agreed, infrastructure levy and Section 106 agreements have to be formed. They have to be formed meeting the needs, the aspirations and the costs of that development on the whatever. How you can do that in 13 weeks when you can't do it in 13 months sometimes means that some real difficult decisions are going to be taken by the fact that there's a arbitrary time. And that could mean, wrongly or rightly, that you and I will find that developments are put in with roads which will never be adopted because they never were negotiated with the council to meet a standard. You'll find properties put in there which may not meet good housing standards because there was never enough time for planning guidance in 13 weeks to do it. We could find that this whole business will create areas of which friends of ours and relations in the future will live in, which have inbuilt failure. And the idea that suddenly we need to, as Mark quite rightly said, there's 1 million applications in the country which haven't been built. The idea that there's a shortage of houses to be built, this legislation is the wrong legislation. The legislation they should have been bringing forward is legislation about bringing forward land in land banks and easing it forward. They basically, this legislation is going to remove, to the best of my knowledge, from what I've looked at it, any planning controls from the local Buckinghamshire Council, and by default, we will remove any influence of the town council. Now, we can go quietly into the night with this, or we can stand our ground and make our peace. Because in the end, we are representing Buckingham, And if we were zoned for some particular area of development, we're not assured even we'll get the uplift from it. And our experience with negotiating Section 106 agreements for Buckingham has been tardy, difficult and long-winded. So I really fear for the future with this. And I think our neighbourhood plan, and the idea that we can have a neighbourhood plan, but we might not have a neighbourhood plan, and they've got to determine that, and it can be amended in Parliament after the consultation. This is a white paper which can be amended at all stages. We haven't got the ability to lobby as much as what some of the people who would be in favour of this application and process going. We haven't got that ability, and we don't have that influence over the ministers. All we can hope is, and I must confess that when I first saw this, I drafted a motion which was tidied up word-wise by Anthony for me, because it needed to be tidied up before it come to council. And we thought we'd go to council. So because of the piece on the agenda tonight, it's here tonight to make a recommendation to council. And I'll say no more because I'll be talking to the motion, but I fear this for the environment. We've just seen what HS2's done to people. We've seen what that has done to our ecosystem and the ancient woodlands, let alone archaeology. How can you determine in 13 weeks if you find a major archaeological site, which is our history? Are we just going to bulldoze it and take it down to the landfill site then? It's about our cultural history and the way we do things. And as I said earlier, we've deviated a long way from the 1947 Planning Act, which was about local democracy and people determining their futures. This is the death of any hope of that.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, is there anybody else?
Sheena has a hand. Sheena and Councillor Troy.
Okay, should we take Sheena first? Did you want to respond to anything?
Just a couple of, both Councillor Cole and Councillor Stutchbury have mentioned this. Just to clarify, as I understand it at the moment, I think the negotiations for Section 106 and SIL will go completely. They're going to introduce an infrastructure levy that will be calculated at central government level. And that calculation should just be, as they see it, straightforward. You will have X amount of money for this development, and then that money is given to the local authority to spend as they wish. And they're saying that they will loosen some of the restrictions on, for instance, affordable housing. So some of that money could be spent on affordable housing. So I think the idea is that the calculation will not be done, the negotiation will not be done at local planning authority level. That will simply be an application of a mathematical formula.
Thank you. Councillor Troy?
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, I mean, I think, as has been said, and the worry is that the devil is in the detail, which is not there. The Secretary of State has said that they want to build environmentally friendly homes that will not need to be expensively retrofitted in the future. Well, the house builders have had their chance in the past to build good quality homes, and we haven't seen a great deal of that. There's been always issues somewhere. And then he goes on to say that homes with green spaces and new parks close at hand. Well, you know, where are these going to come from? And if we don't have the Section 106 or some equivalent, then, you know, we won't be able to put something in. And then ends it, you know, about tree-lined streets are the norm and where neighbours are not strangers. Well, again, we need some more detail on the planning there, because if you start putting trees along the road, you know, we know what the routes can do. The builders haven't done particularly well in the past about tree issues, and that's where all the services go as well. So then they're going to really have a problem if they don't get the detail sorted to put the services in with the tree roots and to make all these homes, you know, pretty good that people want to buy at a reasonable price. So I don't hold out much hope for it, really.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, I think that is an issue, especially as we know in previous times with Section 106, where we might have had housing built near us, but then not received any contribution towards anything. And villages that didn't have any development have had money spent there instead. So I thank everybody for the discussion on this.
Councillor Harvey needs.
Councillor Harvey, sorry.
Sorry, John. Councillor Harvey.
I mean, obviously, our ability to affect government policy is very limited, but I think what we can do is write a letter to NELC and saying that we would support all efforts that they're going to be making to lobby the government to think very carefully about these planning changes and the effects upon local communities. Certainly what I've read on it so far is I think it's extraordinarily centralising and essentially against the principles on which this government was elected. We ought to be supporting neighbourhood plans. That's what I thought this government was standing up for. So my proposal would be that we write to NELC asking them what actions they plan on taking and what we might be able to do to help.
Okay, members agreeable to that? Yeah, show of hands, please.
1, 2, 3. That's unanimous.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. Okay, so now we get on to item 5.2. Councillor Stutchbury, would you like to talk to your motion?
Yeah, before I speak to this motion, I'll remind you of two things. The government has said in 2014 that it wished to build 1 million houses between Oxford and Cambridge. It also hasn't moved away from its wish to build an expressway. So we know what the direction of travel is. Saying that, I would like to propose that Buckingham Town Council wishes to express its deep alarm and concerns about the implications of the wholesale change of the current planning system proposed by the government in the White Paper. Planning for the future, which reduces and removes the influence of Buckingham Council, Town and Parish Council, as well as members of the community, and future applications, the effect of the new regime is likely to impact strongly on the environment, the economy and prosperity, as well as the social well-being of Buckinghamshire. Foremost, it could see the end of local planning and residents having any ability to influence large developments, removing a layer of democratic governance, undermining the accountability within the planning of our community's future. And so Buckingham Town Council seeks assurance from Buckinghamshire Council that they will be voicing their objections to this draft of the White Paper about the content and scope of the proposed bill. In addition, Buckingham Town Council will press Greg Smith, our local MP, to raise questions and seek clarifications of details of this bill within Parliament. Finally, that Buckingham Town Council will write to the Secretary of State reiterating the concerns and note that we said tonight. And also, I include now in this what we've just agreed earlier, that we would write to NELC. I think that's what Councillor Harvey proposed. If it was, accept that within this motion, if that was agreed.
That's already been agreed under the previous items. So we're going to be doing that anyway. This is a separate motion. Would anybody like to talk on this or just go straight to the vote?
Let's vote.
Yeah. Okay, hands up to agree the motion.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Robin.
Well done, Robin.
Sorry, point of order, Chair. Do we need to have had a seconder? Should we have had a seconder for the motion?
I've already seconded it, Councillor Harvey. It's in the paper.
It's on the paperwork, John. It says seconded by Councillor.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
It was already done properly.
Right, so
these things.
5.3, a link to the draft Milton Keynes planning obligations supplementary planning document.
Noted.
I hope you've all read it. And would anybody like to talk on it or just note?
Noted.
Oh, Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I think the reason that this was put on the agenda, I presume by Catherine, but maybe by Sheena, I'm not sure, is that there is this protocol that Milton Keynes Council has agreed with parish and town councils in their patch about how they're engaged with the planning process.
Yep.
I'm assuming our attention has been drawn towards that because perhaps we might like to get a copy to maybe discuss at a future planning meeting and maybe commend to our unitary council in a similar way. Is that perhaps the intention behind raising that particular point on the agenda?
Catherine and Councillor Stutchbury.
Catherine.
Well spotted, Councillor Harvey. Yes, it was with, shall we say, tossing a pebble in the pool to see what happened. It just that we are continually told that we're all too thick to even sit in on Section 106 discussions, let alone influence what happens. And if Milton Keynes can do it, I don't see why Buckinghamshire couldn't either.
So can I propose that we do that then?
Yeah,
Stutchbury.
And discuss it at a later meeting.
I was going to second you, John, and thank you for raising that. You beat me. Well done.
That's just Stutchbury.
But that was what I thought it was. The other thing, maybe we should take a further conversation with them, and maybe we can then hopefully, when they amend the constitution, if it's any point amending the constitution, the Buckinghamshire Council after the new planning legislation, we could recommend some good democratic policies to them, maybe, and take that through council. It seems a very good way of going on, involving parishes in their decision of their futures, doesn't it?
Indeed. Yep. Okay, everybody happy with that? Yep. Fabulous, thank you.
Chair, can I, under neighbourhood planning, before we move on to 6, can I add something to Buckingham neighbourhood plan? Just update that I've been working machine on what next to do in terms of revising the neighbourhood plan. One of the things we need to achieve is the most robust evidence base possible. So we're looking at carrying out some kind of Buckingham survey back end of this year, early next year. And if we were to do that, I think we need to do it once and do it really well. So we need to include in it everything we wanted to know, rather than try and do bits and pieces. And we probably want to get it out with a good gap between that survey and the census next year, so we don't confuse people. So we'll bring more detailed proposals forward. It might well be helpful to call a meeting of the neighbourhood plan subgroup as well to talk that through a bit more, and just to talk through some of the thinking process around the pace we go at with revising the neighbourhood plan, given the state of BALP and the Buckinghamshire plan, which will come on us before we know it probably. So if councillors are happy, I'd suggest we pencil in a subgroup meeting, and then myself and Sheena will report back next meeting or the meeting afterwards in terms of thoughts about doing a good job on the Buckingham survey.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Members happy with that?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Robin has a hand.
Councillor Stutchbury.
I think you make a good point, Town Clerk, but I think one of the things we do need to define is we know that the Chiltern and the South Bucks plan is out at contest. We haven't affirmed what the Vale plan will be, and we haven't really had a successful correspondence on what happens if neither one goes through. It could be the 2004 plan, if the government legislation goes through, will be the last local plan, and which will determine everything. So, you know, will there be a neighbourhood plan? I think there's an important question that we need to ask, not now, but later in the process when things become more clear, whether there will be a new Buckinghamshire plan, because they may not be able to have a Buckinghamshire plan because legislation may have already preceded that. So as Councillor Cole said earlier, there may not be a need for a planning authority. You know, so we do need to ask those questions at a later stage. But for the consultation, we need to have the information about affordability numbers. It was the biggest and most shambolic expression within the Vale plan was when they reduced affordable housing numbers from 35% to 25%. And I noted at the meeting, even though I was the only councillor with my colleague put an amendment to it, the members voted to establish 25%. And we could have amended that. And that's going to be a cost going forward if this bail plan goes through. 25% and 35% is a huge thing. So I do hope, and that's a lot of work for Sheena to do, but we need to work on building up our affordability numbers to go in our local plan to get it somewhere back to where we were, because young people and old people will carry on needing affordable and social housing, won't they?
Okay, so members happy that we call a neighbourhood plan subgroup meeting. Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Ralph has his finger up.
His little finger up, yes, indeed.
Councillor Ralph.
When forming the group, and without having asked him beforehand, I wonder if it's appropriate whether Roger Newell might be included on that if he was willing, because of his experience as a planner and so on and so forth. I know he has expressed some interest in helping us in formulation of plans and offering touches of guidance where he feels it's appropriate. Would that be fair, Roger?
If you wanted me to help, I'm more than happy to.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I like putting people on a spot. Well done, Anthony. Right, item 6, action reports, appendix C. Would anybody like to raise anything on the action report? No?
Oh, Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Harvey?
Yes, even though the application to build the West End Farm care home has been withdrawn, I still think we should ask to see a copy of the archaeology report. We mustn't forget that I think something in the order of, was it 50 skeletons or whatever remains had been discovered, and this is potentially the biggest find of this kind in this country. Surely we have a right to know about this as town council for Buckingham, because we need to be deciding now what efforts should be taken, perhaps working in association with Heritage England, to ensure that this this ancient site is preserved and indeed made a part of the heritage of Buckingham itself. So I think we should be demanding to see this report.
I've got an easy one there for you, John. They haven't done the report. Councillor Stutchbury has been going backwards and forwards with archaeology, and because of COVID, they have said that that's delayed the report. But he is definitely on it, but they haven't produced one. That's the bottom end of it, unfortunately. But
So,
we will see it when they do it. We will see it.
okay, all right.
Roger?
Just to say that Ed Grimsdale briefed us on Friday that they're actually writing the report at the moment. I think that's right, Anthony, isn't it? That they're it's going to be quite a long report, and they're also investigating whether or not this site is linked to the recent find just outside Wendover. So it's going to be quite a long report from what I understand, which the developer has to pay for. So there is a God.
No, that's good news. That's really good news. Robin, got your hand up?
Yeah, obviously Ed's got some more correspondence. I wish he was as generous with his correspondence to me as I am with to him. Obviously, he's not paying me the same compliment. I've had a private correspondence with him about the legalities and where they are. And I was advised in my last correspondence, which I furnished Catherine with out of courtesy and duty, is that they say they will not be producing a report this year. They're saying their report will come forward in the new year. Now, as tardy and as argumentative as I am about that, I went to the planners, and there's some detail within the letters and correspondence, but I do think that Councillor Harvey deserves a proper discussion about this. I think I suggest that we write to Ed and ask him for correspondence where he's got this information that he has, and we have the information that I've got from planning, and put it on the table and have an item on the agenda to discuss this, because this is probably the most major site in Buckingham's history when it comes to an archaeological site. I watched a programme last night how Kent dealt with an archaeological site on theirs. Was 50 Vikings murdered. They thought they were Iron Age and they ended up being Viking. So I think we cannot let off on this. I would like to propose, because Councillor Harvey's due a proper explanation of it, that A, we write to Ed and ask him where he's got his information additional to which he refers to within that report, and B, my correspondence that I furnished Catherine become public, and you as councillors can discuss that. I think we've reached a point where I can stop being public now. I've tried to be adult, and I think we do need to have a robust conversation about that, what we think and what the law is and what will happen. It's Buckingham's future, it's not the developer's future, and Buckingham doesn't belong to anyone but the future population.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I don't want to get ahead of town clerk on this, but I wonder if it's worth putting it on the agenda when we actually have a report to read, because currently if it's being written, we don't have anything to discuss. It'd just be the same information that we've had to date. I can see Anthony's hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just to inform Councillor Stutchbury, the source of Mr Grimsdale was Councillor Charlie Clare, who's also, like Robin, been chasing up on this, and all the information that he had gleaned, he passed on to Ed, and that is where the source arises.
Oh, thank you for that, Anthony. It's just a shame that as a town council, we weren't furnished with that also.
Yeah.
But never mind.
In which case, that'll be my official complaint to archaeology, that they're giving one council within a ward more information they're giving another, and that's a political issue, and I'll follow that up after the meeting. That is tardy and irresponsible, and that one councillor, I would furbish him with any information I received if he so asked it. That information that has been referred to has never been given to me in correspondence. So I will be writing to him and up the officers to ask where that correspondence is, because they cannot do that in a local authority. That is bad manners.
No, it is, especially because you're the one that's mainly
I'm
been
the
going
one
back
who's
at
actually
them.
followed it again. So obviously the officer will be getting an email tomorrow asking what information she's given him that she hasn't given me. And if he's made it up, well, and if he's talked to somebody, he's have to back it up, wouldn't he? Because this is really important. This is our future archaeology. And I'm not impressed that that's information that was not furnished to me.
Thank you, Robin. Anthony?
Just a caveat, if I may, I perfectly understand Councillor Stutchbury's feelings, but this is third or fourth hand now, as I'm sure Roger will agree. And so we must be just a touch cautious, because it could be a bit of Chinese whispers that gets a little bit more no, can't have a little bit more difficult, can you? It becomes a little sort of veering off from what the original comments were. But having said that, it was pretty clear that he had received this information from Councillor Clare.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Right. Anything else on the action report? No. Right, 6.2, we've got results of the inquiry about the Lace Hill Health Centre, section 106, appendix D. Would anybody like to speak on this item?
Mr. Harvey.
Councillor Harvey.
How would you like to try?
Sorry, Councillor Harvey.
Is that your cat talking?
No.
Sorry, I was muted. I just don't understand it. It's impenetrable. It just does not make any sense to me. I'm sorry, but I put at the end of this just one big question mark. I mean, seriously. I mean, I was involved in the League of Friends meeting last Thursday evening, and I mentioned that this was going to be discussed on this evening's agenda. So hopefully one or two of them watching on YouTube for our discussion around this. And I said, and I read out a bit of it, and I said, I'm sorry, but anyone follow that at all? Because I think Mr. Rowley needs to go on a plain English course and actually learn how to communicate with real people, because I don't think the way he's written that note makes any sense whatsoever. If it's simply the case that the Section 106 is not going to run out, then bloody well say it. It's not hard to be simple and straightforward when you're making a simple point. Don't dress it up with all this stupid legalese, which actually gets in the way of ordinary people like us, town councillors, because we're not technicians when it comes to planning matters like this, and indeed the wider public, who will look at that and go, well, nothing to do with me, that I don't understand this, and then frankly turn off. And frankly, it is the responsibility of all officers, of all local authorities and the government, to write in such a way that it encourages people to get involved in local governance and local government matters. That's how they should be writing things, not dressing up in stupid legalese like this. So put that to one side, but I would like those comments to go back to the author of this. Mr. Rowley needs to go on a plain English course. I worked in local government 40 years ago, and one of the first courses I ever went on as a local government officer was about plain English. Now, why the heck isn't that still happening is my challenge, frankly. But I'll put that to one side. So, for example, stop using things like RM. What the hell does RM mean when it's not actually explained in the text? So it does seem, and I'd like Catherine to confirm this, because I do respect Catherine, and she may have managed to unpick this way better than I did, that it would seem that it's not going to run out, in that the land, the money of 175,000 or whatever it was, is going to be there 5 years from now, as much as it is there right now to help build another health centre. Have I interpreted the legalese correctly, Catherine?
I'm not sure that Mr. Rowley knows, to be perfectly honest, because I mean, they've moved sites from the original designation in the Section 106. They've timed out on actually getting it sorted. As far as I can make out, the land has reverted to the original landowner because nobody has taken it up. And beyond that, yes, I got a bit bogged down as well. I thought I might find a member who knew what it was. I mean, I don't think I've ever had to add 7 footnotes to an email from an officer just to explain the bits I could do. The thing is, it's the difference between an outline plan with reserved matters and a detailed plan. Now, one of the things that I hope this new legislation will look into is putting the Section 106 clauses onto the detailed plans and not the outline. Because if you've got an outline plan for a field as big as Lace Hill, there's bound to be details that need refining later. But they set the Section 106 conditions on the whole lot before they've even seen the detailed plans. Doesn't make any sense to me. And we have the same at Tinchwick, because the Section 106 for the Tinchwick Triangle said there's got to be a football pitch up the pointy end. And we say, but we've got enough football pitches, we'd rather have another kind of sports pitch. And the developers turn around and say, well, that's not what it says in the Section 106, so tough. I can see that there are time limits on activating things. But what I can't see is how they come to some conclusion about who's actually going to do it if it ever gets to be done. And the doctors clearly think that it's going to go ahead because that's why they want to flog the land that the surgeries are on in town.
Yeah.
You know,
John, did that answer your question? Before I move on.
I would imagine he's more puzzled than ever now.
Yeah, possibly, Catherine. I'm sorry. But I do think we need a definitive answer from the council about this, because many people's decisions and lives are depending upon this, not least the GPs and all the staff in those practices, or practice rather, but also the people living on Lace Hill, the people living who currently get their medical treatment from doctors based at North End and Verney Close and so on. Everyone deserves to know just what the situation is. And if Mr. Rowley doesn't know or can't explain it in terms that actually make any sense, then he needs to find somebody who can, because it's not acceptable that it's not understood. We need to get a clear decision upon this. So my proposal is that we write back to Mr. Rowley and say, thanks, but no thanks. Can you please give us very clear information here about whether this can or won't go ahead and whether we've run out of time on this?
Yeah.
In which case, and copy in the doctors, doctor, I've forgotten his name, the chap who's been to our
Gabriel.
meetings before.
That
Gabrielle. Gabrielle. Copy in Dr. Gabrielle and let them know that this is happening, because heck, they must be putting in a lot of their own time trying to make this new building come about. And if the whole thing is basically now up in the air and it's not going to be possible because the money's been withdrawn and the land has been reverted to the original landowner, they ought to know this.
Some of money will not cover the building costs anyway, so the CCG are going to have to find money from somewhere else.
Yes, and through the chair, yes, I'm aware of that. Obviously, 105k is not going to be enough to build the size of building that they're planning. But nonetheless, it's still a large chunk of money which they must be putting into their business plan in the knowledge that it should be actually coming their way. Because if they're going to borrow money, they've got to know how much they're going to have to borrow and how much they're going to get as a Section 106 contribution. They need to know.
I was going to ask the town clerk, because he was going to call Dr. Gabriel and talk to him personally, whether he got anything from that.
I didn't speak to Dr. Gabriel. Sorry, Chair.
That's right, okay.
I didn't speak to Dr. Gabriel. I did speak to the practice manager, who was going to go away and look into it. I think is the best way of summarising that conversation.
So they don't know either then?
Well, I think that their view was that there were professionals involved in it and they would hoped it would be fine, but they'd gone away to check without their own.
All right, so they don't know, basically. Robin?
Thank you. As I've had some correspondence with Mr. Rowley, and I've had some correspondence with him. Now, John's quite right in the sense that it's difficult to read. You can interpret it one way. My reading of it, rightly or wrongly, was that the original agreement was in 2009. The Section 106 agreement, and that determined to the allocation of the £180,000 was in the Section 106 agreement of 2009. Now that was attached, my belief, to the original application, not the amended application. That's what I read it as. So that means that they've got to start development on the site, if that's correct, to actually trigger having that money allocated to it. That's what I believe to be the case. But John's quite right that it was wrote in a text which defeats most people. I think David Rowe is a decent man, and he wrote what he was given by the legal officers when he asked the question, because he's not a legal officer, he's a officer who transfers and sees that people's Section 106 agreements and everything's done in place. So I think that's a legal question of the legal department of Buckinghamshire Council. I don't think it's a question for Councillor Rowley to answer. He's not the right officer, and the answer he's given us is one which he would have got by seeking advice, and the wording in that is quite contrast. But that's my reading of it. It looks like they've got to do something within the 12 months, because if you look in the original agreement, and Catherine, correct me please if I'm wrong, it's 10 years to actually trigger. It has to be brought forward within 10 years. It doesn't go on for perpetuity, and they may have outline planning, but they haven't started their planning works. So they have to do something, just go out there and lift a sod of soil or something to actually secure it, or do something. They haven't done any planning works. And of course, do you all remember that the site was going to be where the hotel is presently, and it was moved to there? So it's got a long history. So I think we need to ask the legal planning department. I went off with another conversation. I haven't yet got an answer to, does that mean the money's there or not? I haven't got an answer to that yet. So I think we need to go to the legal department of Buckinghamshire Council and ask them what it is. Because
all right, so we've got a suggestion from Robin and we've got a suggestion from John. How do members want to take this forward?
And Councillor Cole has a hand.
Yeah, I propose. If John's making a proposal about writing to David Rowley about plain English, I second that certainly.
Okay. All right. So hands up for the plain English email, and then we'll take John's. I take Robin's one.
I think, is that unanimous? Robin, were you voting with that one? Yeah, unanimous.
Yep. Okay, and then Robin's suggestion that we go and write to the legal officer. Who's in favour of that idea?
Is that seconded?
Yeah, I'll second it. So hands up for the legal officer.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Excellent. Is that everybody?
No.
Any objections? No, abstain?
1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, so our next is on planning applications. 7.1, we've got the home appliances. Would anybody like to speak on this one?
Councillor Hirons.
Yes, I think we should. This really is just regularising the situation that, as far as I know, has been there for at least the last 10 years, and it might have been the last 20 years. And so therefore, I think we should have no objection whatsoever.
Okay, hands up for no objections.
Councillor Harvey had a hand.
Oh, sorry, John.
Yeah, I was going to say I second Paul on that.
Thank you. So hands up for no objections, please.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Thank you. Is that everybody? I don't know how many we've got.
No,
no.
It's 8 people.
Oh, so anybody against? And abstentions?
1 abstention.
Councillor Cole, would you mind taking over 7.2, because my cat wants to go out, so
Okay.
I need to deal with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next one, item 2, 50 to 51 Nelson Street. This is a grade 2 listed house in the conservation area. Change of use to the left-hand side of the building into a HIMO. The right-hand side of the building will be retained as a dental practice, both downstairs and upstairs. So they're going to try and cram 3 bedrooms, living room, kitchen on 3 ensuite bedrooms with shower and toilet, living room and kitchen into the left-hand side of the building. Notice has not gone up on this one, so neighbours will not yet be aware of this. Anyone got any comments? John?
Yeah, it's just a small question, really. It's in the report. It talks about backing onto church grounds. I thought we owned the ground around the church. I thought that was village green and not actually church grounds, I thought.
Catherine?
I believe that this side of it, which is little more than virgin parking, we just normally refer to the church grounds. We normally, when the green is where we have the pancake races.
Okay, but we erected the hedge that's there now, didn't we? We put that hedge in.
Yes, but I mean that's what it backs onto. It backs onto unbuilt land, if you like. Yeah. I always say, if it's, you know, it's got farmland on the other side of the hedge or the next door neighbour's garden or whatever, this is backing onto something, and the slope of the hill rather precludes anything at all.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, part of this is built into the hillside, and they've got a little, I suppose you'd call it a multi-storey patio garden.
Yeah.
So any other comments?
Robin has a hand.
Robin, couldn't see you in the darkness, sorry. You're very dark, Robin, can hardly see you.
Yeah, I'll try and lighten myself up a bit. What I will say is we do own that land along there. We put the fence up historically in the days when Paula Heath was the town clerk. We had a large discussion about erecting the fence on that side of the ground. We also had the fence breached on that side of the ground. We also were responsible for having to do the verge there. The land which the church have never produced the document to say they own it. They've said they've owned it. We've never seen the document. Is the land of the highway. Everything else belongs to us. Because if not, we should be billing them for the cost of the fence, the cost of the putting the stones and the other addition around there. Because that land, I was advised by Paula when she was town clerk. Also, the area in front of it and the gates are all questionable. We own that land, so we do have to declare an interest in it because we own it. You can go back and check through the paperwork. I predate you by a long time, Paul, so you can wave your finger all you like. I was present on the council when those decisions were taken and that fence was erected. What might be folklore and disjecture isn't fact. It's minuted. It's actually correct.
I need to. I have to declare an interest in this, and it might even be a financial interest. So I can't take place in this discussion. I thought we were talking about just turning a building into a HIMO. I didn't realise it was going to get into a major land ownership issue of the area around the church. I'm not quite sure what that has to do with the change of use of the building.
Yeah, it is what we've got before us is an application for a change of use. Councillor Try.
Thank you. Yes, getting back to the point in hand, I think it's a shame changing it to a HIMO. You know, it's a town centre location, but at least it is being done prior to the conversion, hopefully. So I don't have any objections.
I think Paul's guiding you to take the right decision here. He's declared an interest because of his financial interests and whatever to do with the church. We own that land, so we should declare an interest. And I'm going to declare my interest in it as a town councillor. It's entirely up to the rest of you what you do, but I'm going to follow Paul's lead on this.
I just ask the town clerk to clarify. We're talking about 50 to 51 Nelson Street, change of use of the building. Are you saying we own the building?
No, we own the top of the hill as far as the fence.
So it's land adjacent.
We don't own the building, so I don't see why we should declare an interest in it.
No, and nonetheless, obviously the town council can make decisions on town council buildings, but there is no financial interest in the town council, I can see.
Thank you for that. So we've heard Robin declaring an interest. Anyone else want to, or are you happy to take a vote on this? Do we approve it? All those in favour?
No objection.
No objection. All those in favour? Hands up, please.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Those, anyone against? And abstentions? 3
1, 2,
4.
3, 4.
Yep. So that's 4 to 4, is it? Yeah, but well, it's still carried, isn't it, Catherine?
Can I point out that the last time, because we had the APP, this is the listed building application for the one we had a few meetings ago, we said no objections subject to the historic building officer's comments. Now this is the listed building application and it's not addressed any of the historic building officer's comments that she made to the last application. So why are we going no objections on it when we said before that we were waiting for the HBO to be satisfied?
Right, thank you for that information. In light of what Catherine just told us, does anyone want to change their view on this? Lisa?
Yep, I'll object to this one then. Change my opinion.
Okay. On the grounds outlined by Catherine.
Yep.
Yep. Should we take a vote on what? Can we have a seconder for Lisa, please? Yeah, that's from Anthony. And all those in favour that we now change to objection, hands up, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Objections? Abstentions?
1, 2, 3.
3 abstentions, thank you. Could we also please note, Catherine, that the standard caveat about the neighbours not yet aware of this?
Oh yes, I mean that's a standard form. I go
you.
through before the meeting to see what's got a site notice, and it's automatically written into the response.
Good, thank you for that. So Lisa, back to you, item 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. So we are on 7.3, 44 Nelson Street. Would anybody like to talk on this item? No? No? Okay.
Councillor Harvey?
Oh, Councillor Harvey.
Surely the same issue arises, isn't it, about whether the heritage officer has a view on this?
It's not a listed building, councillor.
Oh, right. Okay, no issue with conservation area. It's not in that either, is it?
It's in the conservation area, but they're not doing anything to the exterior.
Okay. All right. I think we can do it.
So hands up for no objections on this one.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Those against?
1.
Abstentions?
1.
Thank you. Okay, we're on amended plans now. So 7.4, land to the rear of 2 Market Hill. Would anybody like to speak on this item?
Councillor Cole.
Councillor Cole.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to say thank you to Catherine. She's done a huge amount of work on this over the last year or so, and we've now seemed to have finally got what we all wanted. They have slid the whole development slightly down the hill. It has been at the cost, as we heard at the planning briefing this afternoon, of some disabled parking spaces. But again, because it's a town centre development, they're not obliged to provide parking spaces. So I think we finally got to the point we want on this, and I have no objection now at this point.
Okay, anybody else like to speak on this? Martin?
Yeah, sorry for that. Too many screens. Yeah, so this one goes to show how the planning process should be taken, you know, not with respecting what we've just debated a little earlier. This is how we get a good design, a good rapport going, and an agreed outcome of it all. And yeah, this is a good result, really. So well done to everybody involved.
Thank you for that, Martin.
Roger Newell had a hand up.
Oh, who had, sorry?
Roger.
Roger.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we discussed this at the Buckingham Society, and we support the amended proposal.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, so those in favour of no objections to this amended plan?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Those who oppose the plan?
None.
Or abstentions?
1.
Thank you very much. Okay, 7.5, we've got 7 Crane Close. Who would like to speak on this item? Anthony? You're muted, Anthony.
The more excitement of having 2 mice on my desk. I was going to say, originally it was overdevelopment, and it hasn't changed. It's still overdevelopment, even though they shuffled bits about.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Martin?
I agree with Councillor Anthony.
Yes, agreed. This is overdevelopment, and also I think we ought to be mindful of the housing stock and the type of stock that we do have in Buckingham, with all of these extensions and additionals to houses. It's making the smaller house market decrease, and we may need to be mindful for that in new developments.
Yeah. Okay, so we go. Oh, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, just to say, I agree with everything. It is overdevelopment. I think we should also draw attention to the Buckinghamshire Council planning, that they are not being accurate on the portal in customer details, as they call them, customer comments. One comment made by Mr. Julian Boothby, they said was neither objecting or supporting it, but he says, I object to the proposal in full. So they're completely getting that wrong. So I think we should just draw their attention to that, because that could skew things when you've got several people objecting to a plan. He fully objects.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll make sure we put that in the briefing, Catherine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going for overdevelopment. Those who oppose this application, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Abstentions?
1.
Thought I'd just go straight for the abstentions on that one. Okay, so next we've got, well, not consulted on. So the rear of 3 Carisbrooke Court. Would anybody like to talk on this, even though we're not going to be consulted on it? Martin?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Well, I thought this was a bit of overdevelopment there, and I was wondering whether there was a ransom strip between what he owns, the garage he owns, and the property of the house that he owns, because there is a gap there, and I'm not too sure he can include all of it and combine it together.
Catherine, do you have any thoughts on that?
We're talking about the tree application in Moreton.
Yeah.
I do beg your pardon then. Sorry, I've jumped a bit. Scrub that.
Right.
Completely puzzled there, Councillor Try.
Erase that recording.
I was baffled. That's why I went straight to you, Catherine. Okay. All right. So we're not going to be consulted on it, but well, not any point really voting because we're not going to be consulted, are we? 7.7 then land to
Chair, can I make a comment?
Of course you can.
I think, and this is a bit like the item that I know Mark wants to talk about a bit later on about the maple trees and so on.
Mm.
I think we have to be really careful here because it does seem to be a growing trend, particularly on Page Hill, that trees are being held responsible for causing subsidence. And therefore, we're going to be seeing possibly a lot more of these applications, maybe even ones that we don't get consulted upon, coming forward, in which case Page Hill could suddenly turn into an estate full of trees only about 3 years old. It's going to change the nature of the estate quite dramatically. I'll say what I'm going to say about the maples later on, but I do think we ought to note this and query whether the link between the trees and subsidence is one that can only be sorted by felling the trees. That for me is the critical question. Is the felling of the trees the only solution? If it's the only solution and there's a clear link between the tree and the subsidence, then obviously that's reasonable. But if there are other solutions, ones that perhaps might cost a bit more money, then I don't see that the tree should be sacrificed for the sake of saving a bit of money.
Yeah. I'll take Roger next, and then John. Then Robin. Sorry.
It's just a quick comment on what John's just said. Actually, that in your revised neighbourhood plan, it might be possible to put a policy in about root barriers for trees, because, like John says, a lot of the time, it's easy to blame a tree for subsidence, and if you've got a lot of clay, then the ground shrinks anyway. So it might be worth exploring that as part of your neighbourhood plan, looking at policy about root barriers and things like that, rather than just felling.
I appreciate that, Roger. Thank you. Okay, Robin.
I was going to mention root barriers, and thanks, Roger's got event. But one of the things I think we do need to get clear on is, irrespective of what happens and what we agree or don't agree, is what the council's policy is on this, because it could be that we're forming a policy by default, that an application is agreed, and then the next application comes along and the previous application predicts the next one. You end up with like dice, don't you? You're not the first one over, it back to the other one, because it becomes easy for an officer to move that forward. I think we need to find whether because many of the trees up there I think that application was the last one agreed by the borough council. It was an application done by the borough council, and it had protection and development rights and all sorts of things put in there. It never happened afterwards. And most of the land up there is sand, not clay. So it's not, unless they have got a belt of clay through there. But I can remember going there as a boy to school, and the bank fell down twice at Page Hill, and they had to pin it all back again.
Yeah,
so
but it is the bank, Robin, but there's a capping of clay on the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And it's the sandbank underneath it obviously leaches water out of the clay like nobody's business.
But when they built those properties, I can remember watching them pile drive them properties. Some of those properties were pile drived in because of the movement of the bank. So I do think we need to, before the estate is changed from what it is, because I must confess, you can look across the town at Page Hill and it's quite a green area to look at now.
Yeah.
And if that's changed, and as John rightly says, we had lots of small trees there, I doubt if the children sitting in school now will see any benefit from those trees, of any great provision. It will change the landscape of Buckingham. So I think we do need to sort of just go to them and ask them what their policy is, because we could be making policy on the hoof here.
Well, we're not making policy on it.
No, I'm not saying that the planning authority, because this, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the second or the third similar type of thing we've had, and it seems to be the tree can be removed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to establish what Buckinghamshire Council's view is about these items based upon the original planning. Because
yeah, we can find out.
Because Roger's already said a sensible solution.
Yeah.
And,
well, also it's worth noting that Catherine mentioned earlier that she doesn't have any trees near her property, but she has subsidence issues, and it's clay drying out. So it's easy to go straight for the tree, and it's not necessarily that's the issue. But we can discuss that further later when we talk about the others. Martin, got your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. The proposal from Roger, if I may ask, is that at time of house build or retrospective, Roger?
I was just, what I was suggesting is that if you've got tree policies in your revised local plan, you can suggest that as a policy, that rather than felling trees willy-nilly, you have to explore other means, like a root barrier or something like that. Or the other alternative is to, if the tree is mature and has got public amenity value, you can ask them to have tree preservation orders on. At the moment, most of those trees, I suspect on Page Hill, except the ones up the avenue, are you can fell them if you wish, without any consent.
No, I think the three that were given approval for felling, they had TPOs on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If they're under order, then you need consent to fell them. and you have to usually replant. If you've got trees on the estate, mature trees that aren't under order, then you can apply to have them put TPOs put on them for public amenity value. But that should be, if somebody applies to fell a tree, that should be in a conservation area. That's part of the test. Is it got public amenity value? But whereas on Page Hill at the moment, if it's not part of the avenue, then, or Holloway Spinney, then there's no protection. So if you've got mature trees up there that aren't under order, then basically you can fell them.
Yeah, there's a special order just for Foscott Way, Roger.
For where, sorry?
Foscott Way has an order of its own. It's separate from the avenue. 2013, Ian put it in.
Oh, right.
I think we've already lost about half the trees through felling.
Yeah, they should be replaced.
We have asked for TPOs before on land that AVDC owned, and they got quite huffy about it and said, we don't need protection orders. It's our land, with our trees, we'll look after them.
Yeah, famous last words.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
Thank you,
Right.
Roger. Thank you for that explanation. So what you're saying is we need a couple of points and attacks to go with this. One is tree management, whether that's by the council or by the landowner. The other one is route management, either by some protection or the way the house is originally built. But we do need to be mindful that if it hasn't been managed, then there may be other factors here that the owners of the property can't overcome. And we have to really assess this beforehand, because I don't know any other way out that the resident can now, or the owner can now take.
All right. Can we move on to 7.7, please, for our oak tree to reduce the lower limbs? Do we have any comments on this one?
It's already been approved, so.
Oh, has it? Sorry, my bad. Yes, it has. Okay. So next is, oh, hold on, where am I? 7.8. Yeah, thank you. So Holloway Drive, English Oak, Crown Spread. What do members think of this?
Agreed.
Robin's got a hand up.
No, just make a suggestion. We've had for several months now, haven't we? We've had thanks to Catherine, we've seen it all. We've had quite a proliferation of trees and quite a lot of decisions about trees. And I'm talking about the visual landscape of Buckingham. People have the right in law to do what they do, but I am concerned that, you know, you could quite reasonably make the suggestion and about many trees, as an oak tree will last 1,000 years, presumably. They say it grows for 300 years, stagnates for 300 years, and dies for 300 years. So, you know, these trees would naturally outlast most of us. So, when it comes to oak trees, which is probably our national tree, it just seemed, you know, they used to coppice them years ago for ships, but that was done in a controlled way. You know, this is going to change the visual look of Buckingham. I think at some point we need to decide, when we do a neighbourhood plan, what we actually want the visual green of Buckingham to look like. Because, as Roger said about putting policies in about route provision, we need to put some policies in about what we want the green Buckingham to look like. We ought to leave it as green as we've got it for the next generation. Absolutely. And the generation after that. So I think whatever happens tonight, we do need to put that into work into the neighbourhood plan.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, they're good suggestions, Roger. Thank you for those. So, Robin, were you wanting to object to the one that we're on, which is.
I'm not going to object to it. I was actually just
Okay.
saying, I'm going to make no comment. I'll abstain in
Okay.
case I get a chance to carry something somewhere else. But
Okay, so
just,
oh,
I'd like
Mark,
to consider
I just
putting
want-
those things into neighbourhood plan stuff, because
Yep.
we do need to bed down what we want Buckingham to look like for future generations.
well, we're going to have a neighbourhood development plan subgroup meeting, so we can discuss those things in there. Mark.
Yeah, this actual application, it's for the well-being of the tree. It's a minor reduction to the branches extending over their property. So it's for the, I say it's a compromise between safety and the tree's well-being. So I think it's being really well managed. I don't know why there'd be any objection to this.
Okay, so
I was just saying we've had a cumulative amount of work. That's all.
Yeah.
All right. So hands up for no objections to this tree.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Those against? Abstentions?
2.
Thank you. Right, planning decisions. Would anybody like to talk on any of the planning decisions under item 8? Just any of those, the first lot. Right, I don't know who went up first. We'll take Mark and then Robin.
Thank you. Paul, would you be able to get up the photograph I sent out this evening on the email at 6 o'clock?
Yeah, just give me a second.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. The Foscott Way one. Yeah, what we're talking about here is the felling of 3 Norway maples in Foscott Way, and this is right at the entrance to the primary school. These are they're 3 trees which are well away from the property which has made the complaint, 11 Cromwell Court, and the insurers of which say they're damaging the building. I went up to Foscott Way this afternoon to check on the status. They're still there, luckily. They're very attractive, healthy trees. There's tree preservation orders on all 3 of them. So they haven't been felled yet. I want to propose tonight to the planning committee that we urge Buckinghamshire Council to revoke the permission given to fell them, as I do not believe that the Service Director of Planning has taken full account of the unanimous opposition of Buckingham Town Council Planning Committee and the strength of residents' opposition. There are 93 What Matters Facebook comments against their felling to the loss of these protected trees in a residential street leading to a primary school. Photograph there, that's the 3 trees we're looking at. You'll see how far away they are from not the house, but from the garden wall and garage of 11 Cromwell Court. There's a footpath between those trees and a lamppost indeed, none of which have been affected by the tree roots. And I can't understand why the Service Director of Planning could even imagine that the roots of those fairly small trees could be damaging that property, which is some 6 to 7 meters away. So, as I say, the attached photograph shows the distance between the trees and the garden wall. I do not believe their roots could possibly reach there, and any substance in this property is more likely to be caused by the clay of chill drying out and causing building settlement, as we've heard from Catherine. Their destruction would amount to vandalism at a time that the government is urging more trees, and in fact the new planning laws will say any new streets must be filled with trees. Here's Buckinghamshire Council at the moment hell bent on taking all these trees down. So I don't know if there's any way we can get this overturned, but this is what I'd like to propose, that we urge Buckinghamshire Council to revoke the permission and not fell them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Councillor Harvey and Councillor Stutchbury have hands.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, I'll take you first.
Good. Hi. Yeah, obviously I watched the thread that Mark started with interest on the Facebook group as well. I mean, it gradually dawned on me as I sort of engaged in that debate that really this is about the insurance company saving itself some money, or trying to save itself some money. Yep. It has decided that the cause of the subsidence in the house can be resolved by cutting down the trees, because they think at some point in the future, if the subsidence carries on, that they're going to be stumped with a much larger bill. Remember, it's the insurance company that put in the application, not the resident of the house itself. And I think we should resist this absolutely, because I would like to see, I mean, there is debate, and I've looked at various sites, RHS and so on, about just how far routes can travel. I think there is the issue about this has been an extraordinarily dry summer, at least up until today and the last couple of days. And the clay, of course, does contract during such weather. And also there are implications for other plants. One of my trees has died in my garden, which I'm very upset about. I think we should resist this. And I would also say that whilst the decision to give planning permission for the trees to be felled, that is not the same as the landowner, which is, of course, the Buckinghamshire Council, actually agreeing to have the trees felled. Those are two separate decisions. Now, one decision clearly can't be easily revoked, but the subsequent decision of then going ahead and doing the behest of the insurance company is one that can be. The planning permission can be there, but Buckinghamshire Council can decide, no, we're not actually going to do this because we don't think it's actually in the interests of the green estate that we've got here on Page Hill. So my view is I agree entirely with what Councillor Cole is saying, and I think we should write to all the Buckinghamshire members for this part of town and say that the town council and many residents are vehemently against these trees being felled because one, the science is dubious, and secondly, it seems to be more about the insurance company saving itself some cash rather than properly sorting out and underpinning the wall, which is really what they ought to be doing. It'll cost them more money, a few more grand, as evidence from the report that was attached to the original planning application, but it can be done. Cutting the tree down is not the only solution to this problem that the householder is facing. I want the problem sorted for the householder. I've got no issue with that, but it's the insurance company and their underwriters who are trying to make a fast buck and say, let's cut down the trees, then it won't cost us so much. We must resist this with all the strength that we've possibly got.
Yeah. Paul, do you mind going back to normal screen so I can't see anybody? Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think Robin had his hand up next.
Look, let's just look at the grounds of this and consult with Catherine after the meeting, because look, let's be honest, by the time we've consulted around everybody, and if this is the desire of the committee that this application gets heard and that we have a discussion about it, I'll call it in, because by the time we've gone for the correspondence, who did what and who said what and who will and who won't, we may have missed a time frame, because there has to be, so I think there's a time frame where you can call it in and you can't as a member. We may miss it. I think if when Catherine looks back after the meeting, we've got time to go to other members, let's do that. But if that isn't the case, give me the grounds and I'll work with Catherine to ask this to go to committee.
I don't think you can call in three applications, Councillor Stutchbury.
They won't let us.
There's a very limited number of types of application you can call in.
I'm not able to call it in even.
I don't think so. I will check, because there is a list, but I think it's just the sort of APPs. You're not even allowed to call an ALB in for a listed building.
Well, I found out the other day we can't call PIP in either.
No, there is a very short list of what you can call in. And as these are not consulted on, it's not included, I don't think.
In which case, we are basically up to Swanee then. If we can write to as many Buckinghamshire councils as we like. But if we find out by tomorrow that there is any possibility of doing it, I'm happy to do it, because I've listened to the debate. And I also are conscious that we have to protect the householders. John and Mark made the case. But we also heard from Roger earlier in the meeting, there are other ways of protecting houses other than taking the trees down. These trees aren't particularly old. They're only 30-year-old at best by the looks of them. They're not massive.
Probably 40 by now, Robin, because that's the very early part of Page Hill. as
So
you
they're
know.
40 years old. Well, they're not even reached half their age, have they? Have reached a third of it, if that. So, I mean, this goes back to, we do need to find out what they're going to do long term, because we could find that all our estates are like have gone. You know, the green belt could go.
Yeah. All right. Can I take Martin, and I'll go back to you, John. Martin, there's really bad feedback. It's coming through. It's crackly. No, can't hear you.
It's coming through.
Can't hear you. No, crackly.
Can you phone a friend?
That's all.
No, you've definitely got a serious issue there. Right.
Waterfall. Sorry, big waterfall.
All right. Yeah, John.
I mean, to be fair, that's when Martin speaks, that's sometimes how I hear him anyway, but you know. I am joking, Martin. I promise you, I'm just joking. Okay. What I was going to say is, no, the point is planning permission has been granted to fell those trees. That is not the same as actually deciding to fell the trees. That's a decision that has to be then made on top of that original planning permission to fell the trees. And that's what I'm saying we should write to the council, to the county councillors about, is don't make that decision. Stop the order to do that. Leave the trees up. Just because permission has been granted doesn't mean to say that you have to do it. They don't have to do it. They can decide not to cut the trees down because the trees are on their land. The trees are owned by Buckinghamshire Council. Buckinghamshire Council can decide as a body, all right, permission's been granted, but actually, no, we're not going to do it because we like these trees. That's what I'm saying we should contact the councillors for that ward about and say, look at the evidence, look at the actual resistance to this. U-turns are currently popular today. Follow it through. Don't cut the trees down.
Catherine, can you come back on that, please?
I think Councillor Harvey's perfectly right. You can make an application for land that you don't own. You can get planning permission for something on land that you don't own, but the landowner gets the final say.
Indeed. Okay, so I don't know if Martin sorted his issues out, but Mark?
Yeah, well, my original application was to propose that we urge Buckinghamshire Council to revoke the permission given to fell them. I could rephrase that as we urge Buckinghamshire Council not to go ahead and fell them.
Yeah.
Forget the revoking.
Yeah.
And go direct to the council.
That. Yeah.
Go direct to the council in the first place, just to try and stop it. But as John says, then copy in all our local members, Shire members.
Am I audible now?
Oh, there you are.
Well done.
Right. We'll give it another go. I think Councillor Harvey has done most of what I wanted to say, but it is fair. We need to be more mindful of this in the new applications and also in the old ones, as I said a moment ago. There is a case of having trees at the moment. I think it's around 5 meters away from buildings, but there is a case of having them 10 meters away. In this area, it says it's about 6 to 8 meters away. But it's just not the roots, it's the water that they absorb from the surrounding area, which then draws it from a wider area. So, the property owner does have a bit of an issue here. But having said all that, of course, if the house was built to understand these issues, it wouldn't have them now. But that was built a long time ago and different rules may be applied. But I think it still can be corrected by building or some alteration to the building. which is what we're all saying, I believe.
Well, yeah, because the insurance company put that there is another way around it without felling the trees. So they actually put that in their document. All right, can we take this to the vote? Because it's 9 o'clock now. So can we go to the vote that we, oh, Robin, you're shaking your things at me.
Yeah. Let's be clear, the application number of this. This is, it's the, so I'm absolutely 100% sure it's the Highlands News, isn't it?
No,
No.
It's 1942 Foscott Way.
Foscott Way, 1942 Foscott Way. Because I think we need to write to the head of planning and ask her what grounds would the council consider reversing its decision. And we ought to write to separately. We ought to write to the cabinet member. Because if anyone's got the power to reverse that decision, surely he has.
Well, we do have a motion on the table. I'd like to go to the vote on that.
You're holding your head, John. I hope you're all right, mate.
So we go to the vote on Mark's motion.
That we urge Buckinghamshire Council not to fell these trees.
Yep. Those in agreement?
I'll vote for that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for that, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's no other bits under 8. Is there? Nobody wanted to raise? Oh, Mark, sorry.
Yes, sorry, there is one. The planning inspectorate, the appeal has been lodged for 33 Borton Road. This is the junction between Borton Road and Moreton Way, where a wall has been half built across the green sward and a number of bushes taken down. They own the land, but the Buckinghamshire Council turned it down on the grounds that that they significantly detrimental to the amenities and open space, the vision mean to the area. They're asking if the town council wants to put any comments in. The only comment I would wish that we put in is draw attention to the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, which they don't mention. Buckinghamshire Council don't mention in their reasons for refusal. And our Neighbourhood Plan policy 3.6 is to maintain the quality of green spaces around the town, which this falls very, very much into. So it's that on top of ABDLP, the emerging VALP and NPPF policies.
Okay. Robin?
Yeah, just on item 8, we should note the fact that they, due to the work that Catherine put into producing the reason to call that decision in, they actually withdrew their application. So I think we should, we are item 8, aren't we? Planning decisions still?
Planning inspectorate, we're on that one. For
33 Borton Road.
Well, I was going to do on the one on the withdrawal application, doesn't matter. I'll just say it later.
All right, so Mark's suggestion that we comment back about our neighbourhood development plan. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Policy 3.6. Thank you.
Yeah. Fabulous. Thank you. Right. Is there anything else under 8 before we move on to 9?
Just what I said.
And what was that one, Robin?
I said that to note that Catherine's work on providing reasons West End 72 retirement home units resulted in them withdrawing their application, didn't it? And I think she put in the grounds which made up most of the call it decision. And once they saw that, their correspondence just said simply, our applicant would like you to note we withdraw the application. Something quite simple. So the work she put in to the call and the work that we put in, you members put in to deliberate that actually had a result.
Yeah.
So I think, well done, all of you.
So can we minute our thanks to Catherine, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, number 9, Buckinghamshire Council members, 9.1. Is there anything to receive news of new documents? Nothing? No. 9.2, to discuss applications to be called in which Shire councillors to volunteer. So, oh, Robin?
I'm quite concerned that when the list is published, that the Constitution indicates to us councillors sitting in the higher chairs that we should respect the Constitution. Apart from Councillor White and myself, we seem to have a dearth of councillors wishing to call them in. And if Councillor White, as the cabinet member for planning, can bring himself to call applications in, it doesn't look very interesting, does it, when we've got so many other councillors who are representing the same areas have seemingly not come forward. And it's worrying me because, you know, Councillor White can't and I can't call every application in. It would look really silly, wouldn't it? So we do. I mean, you have
jumped to 9.3. We were going to discuss the applications that we've agreed to call in, which Shire councillor. I know it does merge together because it's
it does. That's why I was saying what's that.
Can we decide which Shire councillors we want to use? John's got a finger in the air.
I think I don't think we can decide because they're not here. I mean, obviously Robin's here, but you know the rest, no other unitary councillor is here. So I think we need to have a process whereby we do this. I think we've objected to a couple of applications this evening. I think we ought to write to them en masse after each planning meeting and saying, okay, here are the ones that we think ought to be looked at in more detail and called in. Are you prepared to step up and do this, or better words than probably that? And we just do that as a standard process.
Yeah, that actually happens now after the meeting. If our Shire councillors aren't present, then Catherine might.
In which case, I propose that we do the usual process then.
Members happy for that? That we email them and see which ones they don't want to do. Okay, so 9.3. Who would like to talk on this? Right, I'll go John and then Mark.
Okay, I think we should start keeping a tally, which we should publish on a regular basis, probably around about, I don't know, March next year, maybe, so that we can actually let the electorate know in Buckingham which Buckinghamshire councillors have been active in their role of speaking up for objections to planning applications, and which Buckinghamshire councillors have done not very much. So let's start keeping a table on this so that the local voters can know this.
Well, we are. That's the reason it's on the agenda. I'm going to make sure it's on the agenda every time so that we have an updated list on who is and who isn't.
But it's a bit dense, though. I want to, Robin's on there. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Warren's on it once. Tim is on it once, and Howard is on it. Maybe on the 11 houses in Tindrick Road and so on. I'm just saying, let's put it in a little simple numbered table, because we can't be giving that to people to be counted each time. Let's keep a running total of how many applications each councillor takes to the planning committee to be called in. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we are doing that, but yeah, I know what you mean. Right, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I asked this to be brought up tonight because of the increasing number of applications we are not able to call in at the moment because Shire councillors are saying we don't want to. It happened with Councillor Simon Cole. It happened just a couple of weeks ago, 10 Hilltop Avenue, where Councillor Tim Mills, we asked if he could call this in for us and said no, because he didn't think there was any planning issues, even though even the planning officer has identified issues that It's contrary to GP 35 of Aylesbury District Local Plan, etc. We can't keep asking Robin, bless him, because he does such a good job for us. But eventually, I guess someone down there will, when they see it's Councillor Stutchbury again, they pull down the shutters. So we do need, I think, to have a discussion on this at some point, that maybe even a PR campaign that get these shire councillors who we as a town support should be supporting us in return. You know, they are like, we're ward councillors, they are district councillors for us, and you know, they must do their bit, even if they don't agree with an application with our decision. It might be a majority of decision of the whole council. They may not even agree with it, but at least they could ask for it to be called in on our behalf. And this is surely what the constitution of the Buckinghamshire Council is meant to do. But at the moment, as you can see, looking at that list, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 applications which we would normally have opposed and attended. They're not yet called in.
Yeah, and I did ask Catherine, if I don't know if you found out, Catherine.
Yes,
about
you ask Paul direct, it's easier.
Okay, Paul. When the new constitution came out, we made a decision to just go to our 6 shire councillors, but because we're now finding issues with our 6, we've only got 2 that are actually willing to do anything when we ask. Can we overturn our decision and then go further out to, because the constitution says that we can approach any shire councillor, and if our ones aren't going to be helpful, I think we do need to move further afield now, and maybe that will highlight some of the issues that we're trying to say if somebody else further away is having to call in one of our applications.
So I can't find a record of a decision that we've made specifically to only go to the 6 and to exclude the other councillors from that process. I know in full council we've decided not to invite anyone other than the 6 to address full council and report to full council, but I can't find a recorded decision that says that that excludes going to councillors other than the 6 to call in planning applications. So, and Catherine's not contradicted me. So I don't see any reason why we can't do that. Obviously, we did discuss at the last planning meeting, and we did reflect that they might not be, they may not be massively helpful, given that we've said we're not asking them to come to town council to report in a different context. But there's nothing stopping us asking them and seeing what their feelings are.
All right, thank you for that. That's really good news. Then we can go further afield.
Robin has a hand.
Thank you, Robin.
Well, Councillor White and I were in discussions during the last council meeting on a motion to try and get something forward, some amendment to the constitution. Can't say we were 100% in agreement with our conversation, but we never got a chance to test it at council. The motion never got tested because the meeting was disbanded before the motion was put. It would have clarified some things about what their intentions were with the constitution, because it's the constitution which is wrong. That it's done local town and parish councils out of their historic ability to go to committee. That's what's put the situation where now we've got the situation where now it's put the councillors in a position where they're being judged, rightly or wrongly, because of the constitution. Now, we mustn't get confused here, because yes, I'm quite keen that we publicise what we do publicise, but it's the constitution which is causing this trouble. The councillors' actions, historically, when councillors could call stuff to committee under the old system, it was never a popular sport. I did do it myself, but it wasn't a popular sport in the historic district council. So they're not used to it. And also the thing that I'm worried about is we haven't yet had one of these applications that I've called in, nor the one that Councillor White's called in, actually go through a planning committee yet to find out where it is. It could be could be that we never, if the chairman and the lead officer, as my reading of it is correct, then deem that it isn't important enough, it at the last minute could even still get overruled because of the constitution. And I found out the other day, as I premised earlier, that PIP applications can't even be called to committee under the constitution. So it's the constitution which is causing these problems. The councillors' actions are irritant to us now as town councillors, but it's the constitution that needs to change because it's not right, and that's what's causing the problem. The councillors' actions are exacerbating the problem, but it's the constitution which is wrong.
Yeah, I think we all recognised that the constitution was going to be an issue from the start, but I do disagree with you slightly, because we've had our Shire councillors come back with saying it's not in my ward, and it's just all you've got to do is find out as a Shire councillor what the rule is. It's your constitution. It's not our job to tell them that. So
I resent. Not my constitution. I never got any chance to influence that constitution.
No, it's a Shire's
It was decided by the shadow authority in a meeting before the council was formed by a clique of people. It was never voted on. Only in the main meeting.
So the fact that we hadn't made an agreement to just contact our local councillors, any that we've opposed or objected to today, can Catherine send it out to our nearest and dearest a bit further away? Is that an agreement?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, don't all shout at once. Right, next is where are we? Right, so item 10, Buckinghamshire Council committee meetings. One was cancelled and the other was no applications. Item 11, Moreton Road temporary crossing. Councillor Harvey, do you want to talk on this one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, there's been some debate about the crossing on social media, about whether it's a good or a bad thing. My proposal is simply that we ought to ask the Buckinghamshire Council, who installed it, as to what measure they're going to put in place to evaluate its success. I mean, is it doing the job that it was set out to do? Is it helping divert people from the narrow pathway outside the butchers? Is it a safe? What do people think of it? Are they using it? Do they like it? I just think it would be good to do some sort of consultation and some sort of evaluation of the crossing, because as was pointed out in Paul's report, if Walnut Drive up in Moreton is finally approved, then there will be a permanent version of this put in place. And the question is, do we want it? Is it the best option, or are there other options? So I think a letter to the officer concerned, to ask them what plans they've got to evaluate the effectiveness of and safety and so on of the current arrangement. That's all I'm proposing.
All right, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Well, thank you for that. Okay, so those in agreement, raise your hands, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Chair, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Firstly, just to note, it's Catherine's report, which you can tell from the level of detail.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, Catherine.
And also, obviously, we will do that. I suspect that Buckinghamshire Council will ask us for our view of it. And I generally think, and we don't yet know how long it's going to be there for, but it is temporary. So at some point it will disappear when they decide the COVID thing that allows them to do that no longer stands, and then we'll be back to making an appeal for a permanent crossing there.
Well, I would hope that they would contact any of the local groups, like the accessibility group, to find out from members with disabilities, mobility issues. I think groups like that would be useful for the Shire Council to get input from, because I know that it's very well used by people with scooters, for example. Okay, so on to enforcement, we've done 12 already, so on to 13 enforcement. Any new breaches, anybody? Nope.
Blimey.
Sorry,
Oh.
Madam Chairman, did Carolyn not raise something about the back of Linden Village? She sent an email out to everything. Anthony?
Sure.
Carolyn sent an email out saying about how they'd hacked through the hedging at back of Linden Village.
We've sorted that one.
Okay, right. Thank you.
And the gap has been there for at least 2 years. So
right, okay.
Right. So street naming, receive information, noted. Yeah, happy with that.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. Selden Chase 15. Any comments on this? John? Oh, any comments on this one? Or you want to note it or not?
If I could just thank you both for attending then. That's a very good report. You'll probably notice some of the local newspapers misreported it, saying that Buckinghamshire Council had agreed the plans. They hadn't, of course, and I corrected them, and they put a correction in saying it's yet to consider the plans, and they still haven't. ABDC stroke Buckinghamshire Council, after 5 years, has still not determined this plan. So
yeah,
that's what's holding Valp up. That's what's holding Valp up, of course.
Robin has a hand.
Oh, thank you, Robin.
Yeah, it was curious though, because I wrote to about this, and I immediately responded, and thankfully both Catherine and the chairman attended this. They weren't automatically aware of it. It was only that I sent it, and thankfully you were able to attend it for us. But I do think that Selden Chase is going to be the linchpin, as Mark quite rightly says, to whether the Vale plan cuts mustard or not. And they haven't determined it. So I'm glad that's been corrected. But I thought it was interesting what you had to say. And I'm pleased and thank you for attending, because I think they were grateful to see you, weren't they? They didn't know you were coming.
I think they're always pleased when one of us turns up, because it just shows that we are taking notice. But thank you for the warning.
Yeah, can I just correct Councillor Stutchbury? We were aware of this meeting. In fact, Lisa and I attended the previous one and were invited back again. So we have been kept in the loop the whole time.
Well, I apologise, Councillor Carr, just that it came to me and I thought it was a significant, so I emailed it, because you were not in the correspondence. That's why I emailed it.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you again for doing that, Robin.
Now, if you were already copied into it, Mark, thankfully you were, and I apologise for saying you weren't. There's no problem there, but I can only judge by who's in my correspondence chat, not in yours, because I haven't got a second sight, lad. Wish I had.
Thank you. Right, let's move on to matters to report, item 16. John? And then Mark.
It's not a planning matter, but just to let the town clerk know that a big branch of a tree at the bottom of Moreton Avenue has come down and is partially blocking the path, so it needs sorting. And that's I guess it's either Buckinghamshire Council or us, I forget, who looks after that bit of the land.
It's Buckinghamshire, and Louise and I have got that sorted already.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catherine. Mark?
Yes, thank you. I did send you all this morning some photographs and a note about Tingewick Road roundabout, which nothing's been done to for 7 months, despite Charlie Clare coming back and saying highways were going to deal with the sign urgently. It's not been repaired. It's still only half there. It still does not say town centre to the left, although there obviously is a weight limit or size limit for trucks. The white lines that he said would be changed immediately 6 months ago have not been touched. So you're still sent veering around the roundabout, the long way round. And the sign for St Rumbold's Way is still sending people down past the garden centre to the bottom of the Tingewick bypass, because they put the sign up saying second exit after the roundabout, not before it. Completely bonkers. So perhaps we could raise that again with highways, perhaps with Councillor Clare. And the one other thing, West Street has been closed for 4 days now. The reason apparently is a hole in the pavement and or road. I'm not quite sure which, because I haven't seen it myself. But why close a road for 4 days? Why not just put a bollard around it or something, or repair it? It wasn't on the, we did check with Bethany this morning. It wasn't forewarned because it's something that's obviously come up. John may know more than I do.
John?
I walked past it the other day. I think it's actually not so much a hole. I think it's a communications problem. I think it's a BT box that is being unearthed. And the reason why the road is closed is there's no easy way to protect the worker working on it in that quite dangerous corner where 3 roads converge. That's my reading of it, but I didn't talk to anybody. I've not heard anything else. I just happened to walk past it myself, and I think there's some work underway by BT, but I could be wrong.
It's actually outside Angel Boutique, which is, of course is now closed.
In which case, they're working their way up.
Right.
They were outside the tattoo place when I saw it.
Right. Okay. Was that all of your things there, Mark?
That was mine. Thank you.
All right. Brilliant. Robin?
Thank you. Mark, can you forward me on, or the office forward me on the correspondence on the roundabout? Because when that actually went through, it was in the dying days of Buckinghamshire Council. And now Charlie Clare is not the only councillor who can pursue highway issues. And as I got the section, I worked with Catherine to actually get the roundabout actually constructed before the estate was built, with the town council actually asked for it to be. I am quite attached to seeing that it's done properly. So if I can have that correspondence sent to me, I will instantly follow it up with the officer commit, because I saw him doing his safety inspection of it, because I stopped and talked to him at the time. He was very pleased to see me, I'm sure. So send it to me, as I walked around and helped him, pointing things out to him. So I want to follow that up now. So I can't do it without the correspondence. It's important it's followed up. I now are in a position again to be able to do it, and I feel duty bound after what you said today to get it done.
Thank you very much,
Robin. And lastly, Match's report, we haven't got on this agenda press releases on this agenda today. I think after the discussion around the government changes and what we're recommending to do now, are we agreeing as the planning committee to do that now? And if we are, we can send a press release saying the planning committee have decided to write to A, B and C, or are we going to wait until we get to full council and do it then? Because I think it's important that we raise the questions about the changes in the planning, and that the town council's opinion, which was unanimous, is seen as unanimous as the planning committee. Now, I think under the terms of reference of the council, we can make decisions on planning, and that was a planning decision.
Okay.
That we're concerned about. Proposing we do a press release with the chair and vice chair of the committee about what we're doing, and based on the motion we agreed on our concerns tonight. Because we have to.
Can I just make sure everybody's finished on item 16, matters to report first, please? Is there anybody else need to report anything before we move on, or it's just what Mark raised? All right, Mark, are you happy to send Robin the information about the roundabout?
I don't have it. I mean, I sent out an email this afternoon, but we'll have to look back to January or February to see where we originally raised this as a concern.
Okay, all right, we'll try and do that.
I don't know if the office could help with that.
If
So just answering what Robin has just suggested, what we agreed on the responding to the government today was for recommendation to full council, not I'm looking at item 5.2 now. We discussed and agreed the following for recommendation to full council.
Yeah.
That's fine, Mark. Fine. I was only trying to hurry it along. I don't want to wait 6 months, get a roundabout mended or anything.
Okay, I don't have any chairman's items. So if nobody's got anything else, the date of the next meeting is 14th of September. Thank you. Oh, hold on. Sorry, Anthony.
Yes, next meeting I shan't be here, so my apologies for next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And can I ask Catherine to send me what that was, and I'll follow it up with the officer to do with the roundabout, because it'll be in our minutes.
Councillor Cole didn't include me in the email.
No, no.
Oh, I'll make something up then.
I thought you were.
That seems to be what councillors do these days. So I'll make something up and tell you it's
I'll send it to you directly, Catherine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for coming
Yeah, well done.
tonight. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Chair.